I am recording my death for the purpose of informing all concerned of my own willful suicide, complete non-involvement or culpability of anyone else, specifically of my boyfriend, lover, life partner, and friend, my one, Jeffrey Stephen Mott. You will notice that he is sitting or lying on the bed near me. It is only because I have a gun pointed at him. He is right there. I'm holding him hostage because I have failed him and hurt him and done terrible things which I can never recover from. This includes killing someone who...
Relationships can be terrifying. They have the power to love you to death or stab you to death, and sometimes they drive both partners to commit the unthinkable. Sadly, this is exactly what happened in today's case. The case revolves around 3 men, all of whom have a questionable lifestyle. 2 of them mangled the other with a sledgehammer to fit in a storage container and buried the pieces in their basement. To stay out of jail, both men offered information about the murder, and they tried to pin it on each other. But what really happened? And who really killed Jamie Carroll? Let's get started and see where it all began. Jeffrey Munt, or as he preferred to be called, Jeff, graduated from Atherton High School and was a familiar face at Lakeside Swim Club, where he swam as a youth. He went on to earn a computer science degree from Indiana University and later achieved a master's degree from Northwestern University. In May 2009, Jeff returned to Louisville and began working in the IT department at the University of Louisville. There, he quickly became known for his exceptional work and dedication. To many, Jeff seemed like the ideal colleague. He seems like someone you might think of as top-notch, the kind of person who wouldn't hurt a fly. However, behind this polished exterior, Jeff led a much more complicated and secretive life. He was quite open with his coworkers about the fact that he led a double life. They described him as someone who, despite his friendly and hard-working persona, allegedly had a hidden side, a voracious appetite for violent sex and crystal meth. Because of this dark side, he eventually met someone who seemed like the perfect match for him. That match is Joseph Joey Banis. Jeff met Joey online in late 2009, and Joey soon moved into Jeff's 1400 block South 4th Street residence. This area is known for its historic Victorian homes, which some might describe as quite grand. Now, Joey wasn't exactly the picture of a model citizen. He had numerous felony convictions, had spent time in prison, and struggled with meth addiction. Apart from that, he was the son of a successful plastic surgeon in Louisville, coming from an upper-middle-class family. He managed and partly owned a few gay bars in the city, but his involvement with drugs eventually led him to prison. As you can see, their relationship was far from ordinary, and the combination of their backgrounds created a volatile mix. Now, reports revealed that Joey got to know Jamie Carroll online, on a website specifically for gay men, just before he began his relationship with Jeff. This connection happened shortly after Joey was released from prison in September 2009. Jamie Carroll was 37 years old and from Kentucky. After high school, he opened a hair salon and decided to follow the bright lights, moving from his small town to Louisville. There, he got involved in the drag queen scene and began experimenting with meth, eventually selling it. And as it turns out, Jamie was not just a casual acquaintance of these two, but also played a much more significant role in their lives. He was both their sex partner and their meth dealer. By the way, I post new true crime cases here every day, so if that sounds like your kind of thing, please consider subscribing. Now, when there are illegal activities involved, something bad is almost always bound to happen eventually, and it usually does. And that's exactly what happened on June 10, 2010, when Louisville police showed up at Jeff's 4th Street residence after receiving a tearful 911 call from the frightened homeowner. During the call, a terrified Jeff was heard pleading with the police to come quickly and break down his door to stop Joey, who he said was desperately trying to smash through the bedroom door with a hammer. He also mentioned in a shaky voice that Joey had a knife. The officers arrived quickly, and without wasting a single moment, they moved in to arrest Joey. They could practically see the fear and desperation in his eyes, knowing he was caught. Initially, the situation seemed like a straightforward case of domestic abuse or assault. Jeffrey had called for help after a fight with Joey, and it appeared to be just another domestic dispute. However, everything changed dramatically once the police arrested Joey and brought him to the station. Joey revealed something shocking. There was a body hidden somewhere in their old, spooky house. The officers' ears perked up, and they handed him over to the detectives. Joey recounted a rainy night about 7 months earlier when he and Jeff had invited Jamie Carroll over to their house. Now, as we said earlier, Jamie was a drug dealer. The dealer who brought drugs and money started the party. According to Joey, he was watching porn when things took a dark turn. He described how suddenly there was yelling and blood spraying everywhere. It all happened so quickly that Joey felt terrified, thinking he was going to be killed next. Jeff, who was described as greedy, killed the dealer after getting what he wanted. The story took a crazier turn when Joey revealed details about counterfeit money and a hostage situation. Joey told the police that Jeff wrapped the dealer's body in bed linen and dragged it downstairs to the basement. Jeffrey then threatened Joey, telling him he had to help or end up in the same grave. At first, the detectives from Louisville Metro Police couldn't help but think the story Joey told was just too bizarre to be true. They thought he was simply making it up to get out of his situation. It sounded like something out of a twisted movie, not real life. But as they dug deeper, doubts began to creep in. They decided to talk to Jamie's family, who shared something strange. They thought Jamie was in prison. Things didn't add up, and it raised even more questions. Determined to get to the bottom of things, the detectives reached out to the Lexington police to see if Jamie was really locked up. But when they couldn't find any trace of him in the prison system, those initial doubts turned into serious concerns. Something was definitely wrong. With growing unease, the investigators knew they had to go back to the crumbling Victorian mansion in Old Louisville. This time, they weren't just going to search. They were determined to uncover the truth. And what they found was even more disturbing than they had imagined. Buried deep beneath the floor, in a dark and forgotten corner of an old wine cellar, they found a plastic bin. Inside that bin was Jamie's body, hidden away, as if someone had hoped it would never be discovered.
I didn't do it. I didn't want to be part of this whole thing. But he came upstairs and he said that I would get my down there and help him, or else I'd be going into that hole with Jamie.
The insistence that a hole be dug larger, because that was the hole that was reserved for me.
As attorney Josh Schneider said, Jamie Carroll spent about 6 months in a 50-gallon Rubbermaid container. His body was covered in lime, the container sealed shut with foam and strapped tightly with duct tape so that no one would catch the smell of his decaying corpse. It was a horrifying detail that showed just how far Jeff and Joey went to hide their crime. It was clear that Jeff and Joey were not just trying to escape their crime, they were trying to live large, using fake money to fund their twisted plans. But their downfall was inevitable, and the truth about what happened to Jamie Carroll would finally come to light, or so we thought. Jeffrey and Joey had been dating for less than a year when the events we're discussing unfolded, and they were both 38 years old at that time. The autopsy revealed that Jamie had been stabbed 6 times and shot once. He hadn't been reported missing because he missed court the day after he was murdered, and nobody was actively looking for him, as they all thought he was in prison. Now, with 2 people living in the house, both accusing the other of the crime, the authorities needed to determine who was telling the truth. Jeffrey Munt, who initially denied any knowledge of the situation, failed a polygraph test and decided to change his story. His new account matched Joey's, but with the roles reversed, he claimed that Joey had stabbed and shot Jamie. Both men were involved and charged with murder, robbery, and tampering with physical evidence. The death penalty could be on the table for them, and this wouldn't be the first time they faced arrest together. In the months between Jamie Carroll's murder in November 2009 and their arrest in June 2010, they decided to start counterfeiting money. They came up with a scheme that was both clever and foolish, fueled by their meth use. Their plan was to take small denominations, like $1 and $5 bills, and remove the ink and markings from them. Then, they would reprint these bills with higher values, such as $100. Jeffrey, who worked in IT, knew how to handle the printing process. They had a detailed plan for making a lot of fake money. They got $101 bills and changed them all into $100 bills. Quite a brilliant idea, I'd say, if only they weren't such fools. In April 2010, they went to Chicago and checked into a hotel. At one point, Jeffrey gave a bellhop one of the fake bills. The bellhop took a look at it and immediately knew it was fake, so obviously counterfeit it was like Monopoly money. The bellhop called the cops and they were quickly arrested. Police seized around $60,000 worth of fake money, along with guns and drugs. One of the guns seized was likely the murder weapon used to kill James. Despite this, both men posted bail and were out, until they weren't. Before they could go to court for the counterfeit money charges, they were arrested again on much more serious charges. Cue the charges for Jamie Carroll. Jeffrey, who had been trying to navigate his way out of serious trouble, was offered a deal. He could avoid the death penalty if he agreed to testify against his ex-boyfriend, Joey Banis. So in February 2013, as the trial of Joey Banis began, the courtroom was bracing for the explosive details. Jeffrey took the stand, his face a mask of calm, but his testimony was anything but composed. He pointed directly at Joey Banis, accusing him of the brutal murder of Jamie Carroll in December 2009. According to Jeffrey, the murder took place during a sex act while all three men were high on meth. He described how Joey had used a knife to cut Jamie's throat and then shot him twice. He also recounted how Joey had threatened him with a gun, giving him a terrifying ultimatum: either help cover up the crime or face the same fate as Jamie. Jeffrey confessed that he was terrified of Joey's threats, believing that Joey would indeed harm his cats and family if he didn't comply. Whether or not it was a rational fear, Jeffrey believed it wholeheartedly. He had the chance to tell the authorities about the body hidden in his basement, but fear kept him silent. Despite having the opportunity to come clean and reveal the truth, Jeffrey remained scared and hesitant. As a result, his testimony is still quite sketchy, isn't it? He testified that Joey had been terrorizing him for the past 6 months, and now, in a desperate attempt to escape the fear, he wanted to reveal everything. When questioned about why he didn't come forward sooner, Jeffrey admitted, "I did indeed have the opportunity to say something, but I was scared." The prosecutor pressed him on why he didn't tell the detectives right away, saying, "You were so afraid of Mr. Banis. Why didn't you tell them that you were scared, that you were relieved to be free now?" Jeffrey responded, "I don't know if I would define the police interrogation room as some place to be free." The prosecution argued that while both Jeffrey and Joey were involved in Jamie's murder, it was Joey who had actually pulled the trigger. However, the true events of that night remained shrouded in mystery, known only to Joey and Jeffrey. And both their stories stink, but according to court documents, here's what really happened. The actual night started out with all three indulging in drugs and engaging in sexual activities, but things went terribly wrong. As Jamie and Jeff were involved in their intimate encounter, Joey suddenly lost control. Without warning, he attacked Jamie with a knife, stabbing him in the throat. The brutal assault didn't stop there. Joseph then pulled out a gun and shot Jamie. After a long 10 hours of deliberation, the jury found Joey Banis guilty. Although he escaped the death penalty, Joey's defense strategy mirrored Jeffrey's. They struck a deal. Joey agreed to testify against Jeffrey in exchange for a life sentence instead of facing harsher penalties. Joey Banis was sentenced to life in prison, but he maintained his innocence throughout. In a statement, Joey declared, "I accept responsibility for my actions, but I did not rob or kill Jamie Carroll. I was not involved in any plan to rob or murder Jamie Carroll. I had no idea that Jeffrey Munt intended to kill Jamie. Had I known about this plan, I would have done everything in my power to prevent it. I consider myself lucky to be alive, but I am devastated and heartbroken to face the reality that one innocent person, Jamie, is dead, and another innocent person, myself, has been wrongly convicted of a crime I did not commit. Meanwhile, the actual perpetrator, Jeffrey Munt, has evaded justice for Jamie Carroll's murder and has shifted the blame onto me through false testimony. When Jeffrey's trial began, his defense portrayed him as a victim of domestic abuse, claiming that Joey was the real aggressor. The defense also argued that Joey had manipulated the situation by telling the police about Jamie's presence in the house, which led them to discover the crime. This, they said, was a tactic to shift the blame onto Jeffrey. The irony was that Joey's own actions had set the investigation in motion, but now he was using that to frame Jeffrey. Despite the defense's arguments, the prosecution maintained that Jeffrey was just as guilty as Joey. On the third day of the trial, Joey Banas, who had initially agreed to testify against Jeffrey in exchange for avoiding the death penalty, made a dramatic change. He decided to honor his deal with the prosecutors, contradicting his previous refusal to testify. Joey testified that Jeffrey was the one who had stabbed and shot Jamie Carroll, and then forced him to help cover up the crime. According to Joey, Jeffrey had suggested they could simply take Jamie's drugs and leave, implying that no one would miss him. Joey described a chaotic scene where, after a struggle between Jeffrey and Jamie, Jamie was heard calling out for help. Jeffrey then pulled out a .38 Smith & Wesson and shot Jamie. Joey recounted how he was forced to hold Jamie's body while Jeffrey used a sledgehammer to break Jamie's kneecaps, folding him into a container to dispose of him. Jeffrey allegedly told Joey that no one would believe his story and that he would be the one blamed, emphasizing his own untouchable status. However, the courtroom drama took a dramatic twist with the release of a shocking video. In this video, Joey Banas, while holding Jeffrey Munt hostage, confessed to being solely responsible for Jamie Carroll's murder. Joey didn't directly name Jamie, but he referred to the murder, stating, "I am recording this video to confess my involvement and to address all concerns about my actions. I want to make it clear that I am solely responsible for the death, and Jeffrey Munt has no involvement in this." In the video, Joey describes how he is holding Jeffrey at gunpoint, asserting his control and responsibility for the crime. He says, "Jeffrey is only here because I am holding him at gunpoint. I have already done terrible things that I can never undo, including killing someone." This chilling confession added a new dimension to an already crazy case. To complicate matters further, the prosecution presented another piece of evidence, a clip showing Jeffrey writing something on a laptop. Although the clip did not reveal what Jeffrey was writing, it was intended to suggest that he was involved in documenting or planning something related to the crime. This evidence aimed to bolster the prosecution's claim that Jeffrey was deeply involved in both the murder and the subsequent cover-up. The trial's turning point came when, after 8 hours of deliberation, the jury delivered a verdict that many found surprising. Jeffrey Munt was found not guilty of the murder charge, but was found guilty of robbery and tampering with evidence. He was sentenced to 3 years for robbery and 5 years for evidence tampering, to be served consecutively. The verdict sparked debate. Did Jeffrey get away with murder, or was the jury's decision justified? The prosecution had argued that both Jeffrey and Joey were culpable for Jamie Carroll's death. They insisted that Jeffrey was just as responsible as Joey, but the jury's decision did not align with this view. Instead, the jury found Jeffrey not guilty of murder, leaving many questioning the outcome. Joey Banas, who was convicted and sentenced to life in prison, attempted to appeal his conviction in 2016, but his appeal was unsuccessful. He will remain incarcerated until at least 2030. While in prison, Joey has sought pen pals and friends, introducing himself in his letters with detailed descriptions of his appearance and personality. Meanwhile, Jeffrey Munt has already served his time and is now free. The case remains controversial, with opinions divided on whether Jeffrey was a victim of circumstances or just as guilty as Joey. The haunted house where the murder took place has been sold and remodeled. To exorcise the dark past, the new owners even spiritually cleansed the basement and paved over the dirt floor, hoping to start afresh. What do you think about the shocking twists and turns of the Jamie Carroll case and the people involved? Do you believe the sentences handed down were appropriate, or do you think they were too lenient given the severity of the crimes? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this deep dive intriguing and want more content like this, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on our latest true crime investigations. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.